In One Piece chapter 1002, Zoro showcases most impressive attack to date. It shook up the entire community, everybody went wild, but because of how much emphasis there was on Enma in this chapter and the previous chapter, it's kinda started a debate on how exactly Enma works and how it benefits Zoro. So in this video, I wanna break down how exactly Enma works, how it benefits Zoro, is it a power-up, is it a magic sword, and I want to explain my personal belief on it, which is that it trains Zoro to learn advanced armament Haki, which I actually think he showcased in the recent chapter. But before we get into all that, we gotta break down what happened in the last two chapters, starting with chapter 1001. In 1001, Zoro launched his first attack at Kaido, and this was a serious attack. It wasn't a nonchalant attack. He put the bandana on, he had all three swords, and went right at Kaido with a purgatory onigiri. This was the same exact attack that one-shotted Killer a while back, and ironically, he's actually attacking with Killer here on Kaido. Together, they both attack Kaido right on the neck, and the combined force of their attack just leaves an imprint on Kaido's neck, and that's it. Kaido does give them a little pat on the back and tell them well done, but looking at the actual results of the attack, they didn't really hurt him at all. But what was interesting was that after this ineffective attack, Zoro looks down at his sword and says, I need to draw out more of Enma's powers. Now this I felt like confused a lot of people because the way he said it, it felt like that Enma was giving him additional powers that he was trying to draw out. But as we'll discuss in a little bit, that's not how Enma works. But now let's talk about the recent chapter and what Zoro did. In 1002, he launched probably the strongest attack we've seen on the rooftop yet. This thing was a single slash projectile attack that completely sliced through an entire horn on Onigashima. And it's very easy to forget just how big Onigashima is, but we've gotten a lot of perspective on just how giant this skull is. Like comparing it to Zoro's previous big feat of probably destroying Pika, this horn is likely much bigger than Pika. So yeah, the attack was no doubt very impressive, but let's break down how we got there. So as Zoro is about to launch his attack in the air, before he even does anything, Kaido already notices something is different. He's looking up at Zoro and thinking to himself, what's that? He's noticing something different that he did not notice the first time. Second of all, as we're seeing Zoro prepare his attack, there's an aura around Enma. Now I know in the anime they're kind of going in on this and there's auras everywhere, so it's not that big of a deal in the anime, but when we're looking at the manga, this sword aura doesn't appear very often. And this is gonna tie into something important that I discuss later on. But as Zoro is about to unleash his attack, finally Big Mom notices, oh, this attack is built different. It's not the same attacks that he's been dealing before, and she gets scared. She kind of gets spooked. She straight up tells Kaido, you gotta look out. There is something different about this sword. And Big Mom's reaction here is very critical because she knows how strong Kaido is. When the scabbards all came in and stabbed Kaido, she was kind of brushing it off and laughing about it like, hey Kaido, dude, are you dead? But when she saw Zoro about to unleash this attack, she knew it was dangerous. And specifically, she pointed out the sword, kind of re-emphasizing last chapter's point that Enma is helping Zoro in some way. Another important thing to note here is that when he had an ineffective Santoryu attack, he said he wanted to draw out more of Enma's powers, and now in this chapter, he's only using Enma by itself and launches this incredibly powerful attack that was much stronger than the Purgatory Onigiri. But yeah, after Big Mom warns Kaido, Zoro finally launches the attack. It slices off the horn, very impressive. But after the attack, you can clearly see Zoro is very tired and he's breathing very heavily. And then the final thing we have to note is that Kaido himself notices that Oden's aura is present within the sword. So what exactly does this all mean, and why is there now a debate of how exactly Enma works? Well, because of the last two chapters' emphasis on Enma's powers and Big Mom noticing Enma is different and Kaido noticing Oden's aura within Enma, a lot of people are kind of getting the wrong idea of how Enma works, and the one person that really stirred up a debate was Mr. Morge. He called Enma this magic sword in his chapter review, and that kind of just made everybody go crazy. And while I don't agree with Morge's take that it's a magic sword and that anybody that picks it up could just instantly get a power boost, I do see his point on how Enma is different and helps Zoro in different ways that no other sword has before. And we'll get into that in a little bit, because first off, I want to just clarify how exactly Enma's powers work. Because honestly, when it was first introduced, it was pretty clearly explained. Hitetsu clearly stated that Enma exudes the wielder's Ryo and makes it slice more than it needs to. So essentially, it draws out the wielder's Haki and doesn't give you any additional powers. An easy comparison to make is to Sanji's Raitsu, which just gives you stat boosts across the board. Now, I'm not trying to turn this into a Sanji versus Zoro debate. I think both Enma and the Raitsu are fine, but I'm just simply giving an example of how it's different. Instead of giving any additional powers, Enma draws out powers you already have. We see this clearly when Zoro goes to test it out. He goes to slice a tree, but instead it slices an entire cliff. Now, when you see this, you might initially think that Enma is giving Zoro additional powers to slice off that cliff, but it's still all Zoro's power that allows him to do that. It's just that he was not trying to do that while just testing out a new sword. He was just trying to cut a tree. Instead, Enma drew out all of his Haki, so much so that his arm looked like he was a 95-year-old man. So it drew out a ton of his Haki to be able to slice off that cliff, but the power to slice off that cliff was still Zoro's power. And that's also the danger of Enma, where if you can't control it, it's just gonna completely suck you dry. That's a pause moment, but that's how it works. So that in itself definitely gives some merit to Zoro for being able to control it, because Oden was the only person to be able to tame Enma. Kinemon even said he would not take the sword for himself if he could. So I think Enma's power is pretty clearly explained. But why was there so much emphasis on Enma in the last two chapters? Specifically, why was it that when Zoro launched his attack, Big Mom and Kaido both pointed out the sword and not Zoro? And for this, there are actually different reasons for Big Mom and Kaido and why they noticed the sword. Kaido specifically notices Oden's presence within the sword. Pretty much Oden's aura is what he's noticing. But this should not be a surprising thing, because Oden is somebody Kaido remembers very clearly. When he thought about Luffy's ceiling, Oden was one of those people. When the Scabbards fought Kaido, his scars started throbbing. He is always thinking about Oden. This was a person that had a genuine chance of defeating him, but that fight got interrupted, and that's something that's always been on his mind. On top of that, there was a really good explanation by Kawamatsu about how the samurai pick up the swords of their fallen samurai. So in a war, when a fellow samurai falls, you pick up their sword and you keep fighting. And he specifically says that the soul that resides within a katana makes a samurai strong. So obviously, Enma being Oden's previous sword and all these connections about souls being kind of connected to the katana, and obviously Kaido having a big connection with Oden, it's no surprise that he noticed Oden's presence within the sword. Now, as for why Big Mom noticed that the sword was different, I think the explanation for that is actually Enma's powers. Because Enma is a special sword. The way it draws out your Haki, Hitetsu explained, is very similar to a cursed sword. So while Zoro was definitely using Enma's powers to draw out more of his own Haki, the effect and powers of Enma as this like cursed blade was probably like used more, and Big Mom could probably sense that powerful attack and the powers of Enma being used. Now, this is obviously not as clear cut as to why Kaido noticed Enma, so if you have your own reasoning, definitely let me know in the comments below. But overall, those are my explanations on why Big Mom and Kaido pointed out Enma in 1002. So the next big question we have to address is, how exactly is Zoro using Enma's powers right now, and how is it making him stronger? Because another major point slash issue that Mr. Morge had with Enma was the fact that he was really asking how much of this power that Zoro is showcasing is Zoro himself and how much of it is Enma. And although I just clearly explained how Enma works and how all the power that is being used is coming from Zoro, the techniques that Zoro is using right now, which I believe is advanced armament Haki, I think that is clearly because of Enma, and this brings us to the next discussion of whether or not Enma is a power-up. Now, to me, it is a power-up. but some people like to say that because it's not like the raid suit and just a straight boost in strength, it's not really a power-up, but it's really not that deep. It's just semantics at this point and what your definition of a power-up is. Enma obviously makes Zoro stronger by helping him train. In a sense, I like to kind of compare it to a hyperbolic time chamber. All the growth that you're getting from a hyperbolic time chamber is all because of your training, but that hyperbolic time chamber makes you train better and faster. So without it, you would not achieve the same results as fast. I think it's the exact same case with Enma, which helps Zoro trains his Haki better. Now to me, I consider that a power-up the same way I could even say Rayleigh was a power-up for Luffy, because without Rayleigh, he wouldn't have trained and learned as much. I think mostly people are against calling this a power-up because they don't want to discredit Zoro, which we should not do because Zoro is training very hard and this is still all his strength in the end, so it really doesn't matter if you want to call it a power-up or not. But I think what is clear is that Enma made him stronger faster, to the point where I think he's currently using advanced armament Haki with his last attack. And the reason I believe that he's using advanced armament Haki was because of that sword aura that I talked about earlier. See, in the manga, we don't see this sword aura too often, but we actually did see it pretty recently in the flashback of Odin, and that was when Whitebeard clashed with Roger, and you can see the Haki emanating off of their sword before they clash, and they generated this force field essentially clashing without even the blades touching each other. Now a lot of us when we first saw this kind of thought that this was some sort of advanced Conqueror's Haki, which it absolutely still could be, but the way that the blades were interacting, hitting each other without touching each other, I think is a direct connection of how advanced armament Haki was explained. See, the advanced technique of armament Haki was explained by Hyogoro, where he says it's essentially controlling your Haki to the next level where you're now able to penetrate people. Another pause moment, but that's how that works. Essentially, now you're able to use your Haki to damage people internally. But I think what was more helpful was the image that accompanied the dialogue. In the image, we specifically see the Haki going beyond the fist. So personally, I believe that the advanced technique of armament Haki allows you to extend your Haki beyond your own body, like your fist or your leg, or whatever object that you are imbuing it to, like a sword. So when Roger was using a sword and imbuing Haki into it, the Haki was going beyond Roger's sword and giving off this aura, which then allowed him to clash with Whitebeard with his Haki without the blades touching each other. To me, that makes a lot of sense. I do think that does connect back with Zoro's attack in 1002. And with how much advanced armament Haki relies on control and how to tame Enma you really need to control your own Haki, I think clearly that is the path of progression for Zoro using Enma. But there is another element that Zoro is using from Enma that I feel like gets overlooked. See, when Luffy was practicing this technique with Hyogoro specifically told him, do not stress out, you need to draw out the Haki from other places that you are not using. Now I feel like a lot of people have overlooked this and how it applies to advanced armament Haki. To me, this dialogue here implies that there's untapped potential that you are not using. You see, Haki is like this innate spiritual energy that everybody has, but most people can't use it because they don't know how to unlock and use it. And different people have different amounts of Haki, and the stronger one usually wins. This was clearly showcased in the Law versus Virgo fight. But with Hyogoro's explanation here, it feels like that even people that know how to use Haki, there's still untapped areas that they're not using until they get to the advanced level. And now this gets back to how exactly Enma helps Zoro. Remember, Enma just draws out all your Haki at will. So on top of Zoro needing to learn how to control his Haki so Enma doesn't take it all, the other element of it that I feel like people are missing is that Enma makes Zoro draw out Haki that he could not use before. And I think this makes perfect sense as to why Zoro said, I need to draw out more of Enma's powers. Because by allowing Enma to take more of his Haki out, he gets to access some of the reserves that he's not using. So this element of it kind of of brings out the debate of like, without Enma, could Zoro use these advanced techniques? And the answer to that is no, and that's why Enma is a training power-up. And I think that's the main thing that Morge has an issue with. Personally, I don't really have an issue with it. It is kind of convenient, but it's a shonen manga. There's a lot of conveniences. I'm not sure if Morge is against the idea of the raid suit too, but I feel like he would be if he's against Enma. So yeah, I do feel like that's the main misunderstanding a lot of people have in regards to Enma's powers and the issue that some people have with it as well. Now, what's interesting is how exactly Zoro continues to improve with Enma, because although I do think he showcased advanced armament Haki in the last chapter, he has clearly not mastered it. Yes, it did allow him to launch his devastating attack, but in the end he still missed and he's exhausted. And personally, I'm of the belief that Kaido did not dodge this attack. I think Zoro just missed. Big Mom did tell Kaido to look out, but we did not see the blade brushing past Kaido and Kaido moving out of the way, or like a dialogue panel where Kaido was like, ooh, I would have been in trouble if I did not dodge that. Instead, all we see is the attack being launched and missing Kaido, and Zoro even says himself, I missed. And I think the reason for that is he does not have full control of the powers he's using. He's using Enma to kind of forcibly draw out his Haki and use this advanced technique. So the next step for him is to figure out how to draw out that untapped potential and use it himself in a controllable manner, because you could use advanced Haki without drawing out so much Haki. We're seeing Luffy doing that right now, and when Zoro finally figures out that control, that will really be when he's at his full potential, because then he could just use the technique with all of his swords and be a lot more efficient. And when it reaches that point, it becomes kind of funny because Enma is kind of no longer useful. If you think about it, it's actually just kind of burdensome and just like tries to draw out your Haki all the time while you already know this technique. There's obviously still the potential of it turning into a black blade, but that's a whole nother topic. But overall, those are my thoughts on Enma and how exactly it works and how it benefits Zoro. This topic is definitely not as clear cut, so if you have any other opinions or counter arguments, definitely let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear them. But as always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please hit that like button. To keep up with this channel, you gotta hit that subscribe button and hit the bell to get notified. I want to give a thank you to all my King Pirates Elite members on YouTube and Patreon. Be sure to follow me on Twitch, I'm D Streams, and follow me on Twitter, I'm DKing4, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.